Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Baseball Replay Journal. We've got another game for you here today, another 1908 game. This is between the Chicago Cubs, at 3-0, who play at the Cincinnati Reds, who are 0-3. Of course, the fact that these records correspond so nicely is because the Cubs and Reds are playing the fourth game of their series here, and we're at the Palace of the Fans, the old wooden Palace of the Fans in Cincinnati for this one. First batter up is Johnny Evers, rolls a 63 for a 31, and he gets this led off with a fly out to center field where Kane has it for the first out. Next up is Joe Tinker, rolls a 61 for a 27. That's a ground ball over to third base where Lobert's got it and makes the throw 2 away. Frank Chance now. And Frank Chance rolls a 21 for a 30. It's a fly out over there to left field where Paskert has it, and that does that. We go to the bottom of the first inning, and here's Hans Lobert. 16 is the roll. That's a 26 for a ground ball over to Johnny Evers, who throws it over to first base for the first out. Next is Miller Huggins. Rolls a 55 for an 8, and against the B pitcher Ruhlbach, that ends up being a ground ball over to Joe Tinker at short, and he makes the throw 2 away. 33 now, the roll for John Gansel, the first baseman. That gives us a 0 for double columns. The second roll is a 56, and that's a 6, and he winds up on second base for Dode Paskert now. Paskert with an opportunity to drive home the first run of the game, and Gansel with the very first hit of the ball game. His roll is a 24, which of course is a 13, and that's a strikeout, and that ends the inning. Nothing going for the Reds there in their half of the first inning. We go to the top of the second inning, no score. Jimmy Sheckard rolls a 55 for a 9. That's a single, but of course Jimmy's got that little C next to that 9, which means he is caught stealing as Harry Steinfeld is up there at the bat. 1 away now as Steinfeld is there, and nobody on base. Rolls a 56 for a 34, and the little E comes up for the first time in this ball game, and the dice roll for that is a 24, not quite within the 1908 range. That's a little pop fly up to Hulswit, the shortstop, for the second out. Up is Wildflower Schultz now, and the roll is a 54 for a 45. And we have another little E roll real quick. That's a 53, not within range. It's a fly ball over to right field. And that is Mitchell who has it there for Cincinnati, and he makes the out. And we go to the bottom of the second inning. 32 is the roll for John Kane, and he gets a 26 out of it. It's a ground ball over to Evers, makes the throw to first base, 1 away. Here's Mike Mitchell. He rolls a 24 for a 13. There's another strikeout for Ruhlbach. That is his 5th of the season, it says here, and his 2nd of the game. I'm trying to think, did I start Ruhlbach before? I have to go back and look and see. I may have started him before, and in the first game I may have forgotten about it. Here's Hulswith now. Rolls a 62 for a 12, and that's a little ground ball over to first base, and Chance will make that put out unassisted, no problem at all. And we go to the top of the third inning for the Cubs, and Jimmy Slagle leads this one off. Rolls a 21 for a 30. There's a fly ball over to Paskert in left field for the first out. Here's Pat Moran. He rolls a 34 for a 44 result. Little E comes up again, and he rolls a 13. That's going to be an error. It's a 22, which means an error on Spade, the pitcher. Moran now is the runner on first base for Chicago with 1 out. And Ruhlbach comes up, and you better believe it is bunt o'clock. This is kind of what we're worried about. He rolls a 45, and no, that's actually a good thing here. We're not hit and running, we're bunting. I always forget about this. Spade doesn't have a Z or a ZZ to prevent the walk, and so Ruhlbach ends up walking at that at bat. And here comes Johnny Evers now with 2 runners on, only 1 out, and the Cubs have the chance to blow this one open. The roll is a 25. Result is an 11, which is a base hit by Evers. That will score 1. That scores Moran, sends Ruhlbach over to third. And then Evers steals second as Joe Tinker's up there, and there's 1 out and runners on second and third. And we're going to pitch to Joe Tinker. I'm thinking about potentially walking him. No, we're going to pitch to him even with first base open. And he rolls a 7, and that will punish us for pitching to him. Drives home both runs and then winds up on second base on the throw home to try to cut off or to try to get Evers at the plate. And here comes Frank Chance now with a chance to really blow this game open. 3-0 so far, Cubs. 3 runs here in the top of the third inning. He rolls a 63 for a 31. There's a fly ball over there to Kane, makes the play. That's the second out of the inning. I was about to say Cincinnati's done a good job so far of keeping what is probably the best offense in the National League at bay until they didn't. The roll for Sheckard is a 24 for a 13. That's a strikeout, and they get out of the inning, but it's 3-0 now as we go to the bottom of the third inning. And it's not looking so good in Cincinnati. First man up, Larry McLean rolls a 26 for a 32. That's a fly out to right field. And Schultz got it for the first out. Up comes Bob Spade now. Rolls a 31 for a 23, one of those fun, unusual play numbers. The system changes that to a 36 and then ends up being a ball. The next roll is a 42 for a 13, and there's a strikeout. Now, usually those 23s end up on pitcher cards as Hans Lober comes in there. It ends up on pitcher cards, and it's famous because there is a on-base situation where that will give you a rain out, and there was always the joke in the APBA community that it only rains when the pitcher's up and like runners are on first and second or whatever. Lober rolls a 25 for an 11. That's a base hit, and he steals second as Miller Huggins lumbers up there to bat. There's a runner on second base now for the Cincinnati Reds, and they have a chance to do something. And the roll is a 64 for a 29, little bouncer back to Rulbach, and he throws, bouncer over to Chance at first. Rulbach covers at first and throws his man out. And here comes Harry Steinfeld now, top of the fourth inning, 3-0 Cubs. The roll is a 62 for a 12, and there's a little ground ball over to Gansel, does himself one away. Wildflower Schultz now rolls a 53 for a 15. Randomizer changes that error up for us. It ends up being a hit over to Gansel, who boots it. Schultz is on at first base. One out, one runner on, and here is Jimmy Slagle. Roll is a 26 for a 27. That's a ground ball over to third base. Lobert has it, looks to second, has to go to first, and Schultz moves up to second on the play. And now we have Pat Moran. And Moran rolls a 16 for a 26. That's just a little ground ball over to second base. Huggins has it. Miller throws to first, and that does that. We go to the bottom of the fourth inning now. 3-0. Reds are trailing. The roll to John Gansel. His roll is a 24 for a 13. That is a strikeout, and there's one away. And here comes Dode Paskert. And the roll again is a 24 for a 13. How many 24s have we had here today? That's the fifth strikeout of this game for Rulbach, who doesn't have any of the strikeout ratings. Pretty impressive job. Next roll is a 25. Just missed that one. John Kane gets a single, but unfortunately that little C means he's caught stealing as Rulbach comes up there, and that will end the inning. Nothing doing for the Reds in the bottom of the fourth inning. Again, 3 hits for both teams, but the Cubs have the better of it. 3-0 the score. Top of the fifth. Rulbach rolls a 61 for a 36. The play result numbers change to a 39. Doesn't really matter. It just ends up being a strike. And next he rolls a 42 for a 13 and the strikeout. And up comes Johnny Evers. He rolls a 31 for a 9, and that's a little pop fly over to Lobert at third base. 2 away for Joe Tinker. He rolls a 53 for a 20. Error result numbers change to 22, and there's an error on Bob Spade. I believe that's the second error of the ball game. 3 errors in Cincinnati so far today. And here comes Frank Chance with yet another chance to really drive things open. He rolls a 61 for a 37, which is a little ground ball over to Gansel at first. And he flips it over to Spade covering for the out. We go to the bottom of the fifth inning. I was going to say if he rolled a 37 as the dice number, that would have been impressive because these only go up to 6. Mitchell now rolls a 66 for a 0, and he can go deep, and he gets a 33, and that goes very deep here at the Palace of the Fans, and he winds up on third base with a triple. That brings up Rolly Hulswit. We're not going to have the infield in. We'll just play this one straight. Palace of the Fans, of course, as you know, is very interesting because this used to be what they called League Park before it burned down in 1900. There's great newspaper coverage of that. I should show it to you sometime. Hulswit rolls a 36 for a 33, and here comes the little E. This little E might be a big one, and it's going to come into play. The roll is a 16. That ends up being an error on Scheckert, the left fielder, as he bobbles it. He bobbles the ground, so it's a single to left field, which means that the RBI will count for Hulswit, and the error is as Scheckert tried to field that, he ended up bobbling it. Hulswit makes it over to second base with nobody out here. Here is Larry McLean, and the roll is a 15 for an 8. Rule box still a B, and that's a little tapper back to Ed, and he throws over to first for the first out, and here comes Bob Spade. Oh, man. We're going to play the infield in, but we're not going to bunt. Not with the slow runner on third. And the rule is a 25 for a 9. And that's a single through short. And the run scores, and it's a 3-2 ball game now. And Spade is called out at second base as he's trying to stretch this into a double. And the play goes Scheckert to Tinker. And you have to wonder, what in the world is Bob Spade thinking here? And this suddenly is a close ball game. It's 3-2 now Cubs, and here comes Hans Lobert, and the Reds just might be able to turn this one around. The roll's a 64 for a 13, and there's a strikeout. And we go to the top of the 6th, and Jimmy Sheckard comes up now. The first roll. The roll for him is a 56 for a 34. We'll check the little E. Get a 26, so no little E comes into play. That ends up being a harmless pop fly over to Holsworth for the first out. Harry Steinfeld up next. And he rolls a 13 for a 14, and that's a base on balls, and he takes his base, and we're going to hit and run now with Schultz up there and to see if we can't make something happen. The roll is a 32 for a 26. It's a good hit and run ground ball down to Huggins, who makes the play at first. Steinfeld in there at second base now with 2 outs, and Jimmy Slagle up there hoping to drive him in. And he does so. The roll is an 11, and there's a single to right field. Runner scores, and it's 4-2 Cubs now. And here comes Pat Moran. And he rolls a 44 for an 8. That will send Slagle to third base. Moran holds at first. And now we have Ed Rulebach up there with runners on first and third and 2 outs. And we're just going to swing away. No problem at all. He rolls a 36 for a 33. That's a little pop fly up to Huggins at second base, and he makes the catch. But the Cubs do get one back in that inning, and it's 4-2 now Chicago. And here comes Miller Huggins, bottom of the 6th inning. And the roll is a 12 for a 24. It's a little ground ball over to Tinker at short, 1 away. John Gansel is next up there. He hits a 55 for an 8. And against the B, that's another ground ball to Tinker at short. That's the second out. Here's Dode Paskert. He rolls a 55 for another 8, and he goes back. This time it's a fly ball hit up and over to Slagle in center. And that does that. We go to the top of the 7th inning. This game moving quickly. Evers rolls a 56 for a 14 and takes first base on the walk. Not many hits in this ball game, 10 total, and we've had a number of walks. That's the third walk given up by Spade. Bob Spade not exactly having the best game of his life, and we're going to hit and run with Chicago now. Joe Tinker up there. He rolls a 55 for another 8. That ends up being a single. And you can see here that the C pitcher can't do much about that 8. And now we have runners on first and third for the Cubs with nobody out here in the top of the 7th inning. And I have a feeling that this game may be about to be blown wide open. Here's Frank Chance up there now. We will not put the hit and run on because there's really no need to do so. We will have the infield come in, though, even though I know that I'm not going to bunt. We'll see what happens. The roll is a 44 for another 8, and that's a fly ball over to center field. Canes got it. 1 run scores. Tinker holds it first, and that's the first out. You might be wondering why the C stopped the 8 there. That's just sort of the magic of the boards. That's the way that the boards were originally written. In fact, it was J. Richard Seitz who made sure that that was the case back in the old days. Up comes Jimmy Sheckard, and he rolls a 66, and we go into the second column as that is a 0. Next roll is a 36 for a 6, and he hits a double over first base. Tinker able to make it to third, and Sheckard rolls up, of course, with the double on second base. And here comes Harry Steinfeld just like that, and the Cubs are really threatening now. And we've got to wonder how much longer we're going to go with Spade. He's not fooling many people. Roll is a 65 for a 35, and we'll take a look at this little E rating. And that roll is a 36, and so that ends up being a little pop-up over to first base. Gansel's got it, and that's 2 away. And here's Schultz with a chance to add to Chicago's lead. And the roll is a 15 for an 11. Schultz gets the base hit, scores. He drives in both runs, and then he steals first base as Slagle climbs in there. Yeah, we're going to take Spade out right now. We're going to take Spade out right now because there's no sense really in keeping him in this ball game. We're looking for somebody who has the ability to pitch long term, and it looks like Tozer's our man. And so the Reds rather go with Tozer here. Runner on second base, 2 outs here, top of the 7th inning, 7-2 Chicago now. And the roll by Slagle is a 51 for a 9, which against the C pitcher is a little ground ball over to Gansel at first base. And finally, the Reds get out of the inning. 3 runs for the Cubs there, 7-2 Chicago. Here comes John Kane. Rolls a 62 for a 12, and that's a little ground ball over to Frank Chance at first base for the first out. Mike Mitchell now rolls a 31, and that's a 14. Rulebach unable to do anything about it. That's a base on balls. Here comes Rudy Holsworth, and they're going to hit and run. There's a 34 for a 44, which, as I said a couple of games ago, is that big hit and run number, and that sends the runner Mitchell over to third base as Rudy Holsworth winds up with a big clutch single. And here come the Reds. Larry McLean now. 1 out. we're just going to swing away with him again here, and he rewards us by rolling an 11. I don't know if you saw those dice dancing here on this felt pad, and then a 56 in double columns, and he gets the big double, scores both runs, and winds up on second base. 7-4 Cubs now, and Tozer is up, hitting for himself. He can't hit anything, can't hit the broadside of a barn. It's one of the worst cards I think I've ever seen, and we will bunt with him. Rolls a 35 for a 30. 35 is usually a head number. That's a little bunt over to Steinfeld at third base. He makes the out at first, and here comes Hans Lobert, 2 away now, runner on third base, and Larry McLean. He rolls a 64 for a 13. That's a strikeout, and you can forget all about it. The Reds score 2 in that inning, 7-4 Cubs. Pat Moran is coming up here in the top of the 8th inning. Rolls a 24 for a 13, and there's yet another strikeout, and there's one away. Here comes Ed Rulbach, and he rolls a 14 for a 43. It's a fly ball over to Paskert and left. There's 2 away, and here's Johnny Evers, and he rolls a 14 for another 43, another fly ball over the left field. We go to the bottom of the 8th inning, and here comes Miller Huggins against Ed Rulbach. Roll is a 52 for a 27. That's a ground ball over to Steinfeld at third base. He makes the throw, 1 away. 7 strikeouts in this game for Ed, pitching well. And the next batter is John Gansel. Rolls a 51 for an 8, which is a ground ball over to Tinker, who throws over to first for the out, 2 away. Dode Paskert now up there, rolls a 36 for a 32. That's a fly ball over to right field. Schultz makes the play. He's got a beat on it, and that does that. And here we go into the top of the 9th inning. Joe Tinker now to lead it off for the Cubs. And Tinker rolls an 11, and the Cubs are getting all those good rolls. That's what it feels like when you have a really good team. And he ends up with a 15 into double columns, and that's a triple for Joe Tinker. And here comes Frank Chance, and this game is really about to be over, and I really mean over. Frank Chance now, and the roll for him is a 14 for a 43. We're going to check up on this little E really quick. And it's a 13, and the little E does come into play, and that's a little fly ball over to right field. And Mitchell drops that one, and Chance is on at first base, and the runner Tinker scores, and you have a runner on first base with nobody out for Jimmy Sheckard. 8-4 Chicago now. And Sheckard up there rolls the 62 for a 12. That's a little force out there at second base. It goes Huggins to Holsworth, and Sheckard is the new runner on first. He beats out the double play. Harry Steinfeld now up there rolls the 31. 31 for a 9. That's a little ground ball over to third base, and it's Lobert making the play. Throws over to first, and then moves Sheckard up to second, but with 2 outs. And here comes Schultz. The roll is a 64 for a 29. That's a little ground ball over to Gansel at first, and that does that. And we go to the bottom of the 9th inning. John Kane up now, and he's one of the last hopes for Cincinnati. He rolls a 33 for an 8, but Rulbach still is got that B. That ends up being a little ground ball over to Tinker at short, 1 away. Here's Mike Mitchell. The roll is a 16 for a 26. That's a little ground ball over to Evers at second base. He makes the throw, 2 away. Randy Holsworth now. He rolls a 32 for a 26, another ground ball over to Evers at second base. And that does it, and there's the putout, and there's your ball game. It's the final score is Cubs 8 and Reds 4. And man, oh man, this was an interesting one. 4 errors for the Reds in this ball game. And the Cubs didn't exactly tear the cover off the ball, did wind up with 9 hits and 8 runs total. And boy, the Cubs really do have a good team, don't they? Well, I certainly hope that you enjoyed that, and I will see you tomorrow with more baseball action here on the Baseball Replay Journal, and I'll see you then. Bye.